To the man who was once the most feared figure in all of hip-hop. But here he is now, Suge Knight, a former rap powerhouse, collapsing in court.
You think he was scared to come out the cell, or he was just like, he didn't want to be a part of that?
Well, he had to be scared because he didn't come over here with us.
He's led an additional 5 years in state prison for a total unstayed term of 28 years.
Suge Knight went from being the most feared record label boss, with some of the best artists in his bag, to becoming an orange-wearing criminal ousted from society. After struggling in the streets and getting himself out of the inner-city poverty, he slowly degenerated into a life of crime, and his life went from 100 to 0 real quick. What happened to him? How did this fame suddenly become irrelevant to the world? Is there any hope of him making a return? Or is this the end of Suge Knight? Trouble in jail. Now that Suge Knight is in jail, all his enemies have easier access to him because there's no way out. Too Short talked about the 5 weeks he spent in a cubicle beside Suge Knight.
They put me in the little bitty cubby hole right next to Suge. Got locked down. It was 2015. I don't know when he went in, but you can check.
Yeah.
2015. And we had like the visit. I was there 5 weeks. I probably saw him 3 or 4 times. You know, get a couple moments, and it was cool like that.
Yeah.
But that's the last time I've seen him. And
2015, wow.
yeah.
Too Short said that Suge was laying low throughout his time there, which seemed like a confirmation of the interview clip from a Blood Pyro gang leader in LA County Jail with Suge. The in-prison gang leader claims that Suge Knight spends most of his time in his cell and is afraid to spend time with the other inmates. His days of violence and intimidation have been placed on hold for the next 28 years because the gang members in jail don't seem to be smiling with him either.
You think he was scared to come out the cell, or he was just like, he didn't want to be a part of that?
Well, he had to be scared because he didn't come over here with us. That's what I was speaking to. I was showing them. I was trying to illustrate based on what we talked about, me and Suge. But hey, man, you can come out.
But with all the attention, don't necessarily think he's lying low because he's afraid. I mean, he spent most of his life in and out of jail, so why should gangs suddenly make him scared? Maybe he's trying to get an early release based on good conduct. Associating with other criminals can get him in trouble. He was lucky to avoid the life sentence, so he now has to use his time wisely. However, Suge being in prison hasn't kept him out of trouble on the outside. In 2002, he was sued by Lydia Harris, a former death row employee, for $107 million in unpaid royalties and profits. A judge ordered him to pay her in 2005, but he never did, and the case has resurfaced again. And check it out. Suge couldn't afford his $10 million bail. So how in the hell is he gonna pay $107 million when he's not even running death row anymore? Shit's wild. But let's go back for a minute and see how much crime and violence there was in his past. Suge Knight's criminal history.
If you don't want us to film, we'll turn it off, man.
If you're on the phone talking to your bitch, doing whatever you're doing, you don't want nobody putting no camera in your face while you're handling your business.
Sorry
Have
about that.
respect.
Okay.
Well, I'm born and raised out here.
Yeah.
My niggas don't have cameras, they have guns.
Suge Knight didn't just run the industry, but also the streets. In October 1987, he was arrested for domestic violence against his girlfriend at the time. He even chopped off her ponytail on the street, which meant that he didn't care who saw him committing his heinous acts. On Halloween of that same year, he was arrested for stealing a car while concealing a weapon. As if stealing the car wasn't enough, he tried to kill the driver of the car by shooting at him 3 times, which also got him an attempted murder charge. He was placed on 2 years probation, but Suge isn't the one to learn his lessons from experiences. During his probation, he assaulted 2 rappers at a Hollywood recording studio. He pleaded guilty to felony for armed robbery and assault with a firearm.
If a man lets another man take care of him, he shouldn't be offended or get upset when that man treat him like a bitch.
Growing up surrounded by violence and only ever knowing how to use intimidation to his advantage didn't do anything good for Suge Knight. But we can't blame his upbringing because he was already a record executive and didn't care about how his personality was rubbing off on his brand. But who really cared? He was promoting gangsta rap and living up to the hype. Anyway, his track record as a criminal didn't end there because the night Tupac was killed in 1996, Suge had gotten into a scuffle with someone.
This video, Death Row Records co-founder Marion Suge Knight is circled.
After Tupac's death, Suge was arrested and sentenced to 9 years in prison for violating his parole conditions. He only spent 5 years in prison before he got released on probation in 2001. Part of the conditions was for him to avoid Dr. Dre. It appeared that Suge Knight got in trouble as a yearly routine because in 2002, a year after his release, he moved to Malibu without telling his parole officer. He spent 61 days in jail for the offense before getting released again. In 2003, he got arrested again for slugging a valet in Los Angeles, and he spent 10 months in prison. Take a deep breath for this one, because when you think Suge would lay low, he'll come out from the ashes and tell you that you ain't seen nothing yet. In 2005, he got arrested for taking an illegal U-turn, and marijuana was also found in his car, which attracted a 1-week jail sentence and 2 months house arrest. All these legal troubles troubles and back and forth in police custody eventually cost him his career, because by 2006, he declared bankruptcy for both him and Death Row Records. Suge claimed debts of over $100 million. Imagine spending years intimidating people to build a record label, only to lose it due to bad decisions and your inability to stay away from crime.
2006. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. At one point, Death Row completely filed for bankruptcy, got bought out by another company.
I stood up for these niggas, and the niggas didn't appreciate it. So when I got locked up, these niggas cheered.
But I'm sure every artist on Death Row got overpaid.
After his bankruptcy, he laid low for only 2 years. Suge had to post a bail of $19,000 in 2008 after assaulting a naked woman while holding a knife. From 2008 to 2015, he got arrested for misdemeanors like second-degree robbery, altercations, and violence. Eventually, everything came to an end in 2015 when he was arrested for being involved in a hit and run. This would bring us to his present-day sentence. But what happened to the man to make him act this way, even after it seems like the world was handed to him on a silver platter? The fear of Suge Knight. Marion Hugh Knight grew up as an overweight kid in Compton, and that was how he got his nickname Sugar Bear. He grew up in a city riddled with crime, and gang violence was a normal occurrence for him. The first murder he witnessed was when he was 5, and that shaped his mind into believing that the only way to get what you want is through intimidation. He once found a dead body with a wallet full of money and stole it to share with his mother. Most children would throw up, run, or go unconscious after seeing a dead person. But that wasn't the case for Suge, as this was a normal occurrence for him in the city of Compton. After college, he joined the NFL and played for the Rams in 1987. But he didn't like the working conditions of the NFL and felt like the system was rigged against him. So he left and started working as a bouncer for nightclubs. Working in nightclubs meant access to celebrities, and he saw Bobby Brown and other artists. Suge saw how money exchanged hands, how artists got signed and became popular. So in 1989, he started his own music publishing company. His decision was laudable because he didn't have any experience, but wanted to go for something new. But it was also laughable because he went into the industry with a rugged mindset. Suge Knight's first profit as a music executive was through Mario Johnson, one of his signees. Vanilla Ice had co-written Ice Ice Baby with Mario Johnson, but Mario claimed that Vanilla Ice didn't write any part of the song. Johnson was the sole writer.
He lies. Like, every song I did on that album, he credited himself. He said he wrote Ice Ice Baby at 16. He didn't write no parts of that song. And he really believed it. So imagine that.
The song had sold millions of copies globally, and Mario Johnson had major songwriting rights, but wasn't getting anything. Suge and his goons approached Vanilla Ice multiple times to do the right thing, but he remained adamant that there was no wrongdoing. So Suge visited Vanilla Ice in his hotel room and threatened to throw him down the balcony if he didn't give Mario the rights to the songs. Ice agreed, and that's how the funds to start Death Row Records were obtained. This was the beginning of the fear of Suge Knight in the music industry. The fear was so bad that even ABC had to do a documentary on it.
But now, for what Rob Van Winkle says is good reason, he has moved far away from the recording studios of Los Angeles, as far away as he can.
Because I'm scared, that's why.
Vanilla Ice moved away from Los Angeles and stopped recording there. Even Jerry Heller, a record executive, started sleeping with a revolver beside his bed after his encounter with Suge Knight.
You know, this art form isn't worth me and my family getting killed.
And we all know that after getting the funds to start Death Row Records, Suge needed artists, and Dr. Dre approached him. Dre wanted to get out of his deal with NWA because of royalty issues, but getting out of a contract in the entertainment industry isn't as easy as it should be. Knowing this, Suge Knight visited Eazy-E and Jerry Heller to talk, because what's a Suge Knight discussion without intimidation? It turned out that his tactic worked, because NWA gave him Michel'le, Dr. Dre, and the DOC. Death Row Records was ready to take over the music scene, while Jerry Heller couldn't sleep without his revolver. The end of Suge Knight.
There is some new and disturbing video that will impact the murder case against media mogul Suge Knight.
Suge Knight was arrested for hitting 2 men, Sloan Bone and record executive Terry Carter, with his truck in 2015. It was a gory experience because he completely crushed Terry under his truck, who died immediately. Suge's murder trial started in 2018, and it seems like he got attorneys who had a similar conscience. Matthew Fletcher and Thaddeus Culpepper were arrested as the trial commenced in 2018 because they tried to bribe witnesses. Although they barely spent a week in jail, their actions showed that Suge didn't really have a reasonable case for himself. Suge Knight was asked to pay a bail of $25 million, and in response to this, he fainted in court.
Here he is now, Suge Knight, a former rap powerhouse, collapsing in court, where he's facing a murder charge. The man who built an empire, founding Death Row Records.
Former rap mogul Marion Suge Knight unconscious in a Los Angeles courtroom.
The bail was later reduced to $10 million, but the former label executive still couldn't afford it. After Terry Carter's daughter gave her testimony in court, Suge was sentenced to 28 years in prison. He attempted to get out of prison by claiming to be blind and COVID positive, but the judge saw beyond that and insisted on him remaining in prison. Suge Knight went from being the most feared man in Hollywood to becoming a quiet man in jail with hundreds of millions of debt to his name. Now when people hear the name Suge Knight, they just shrug because his influence is faded.
He'll have an additional 5 years of state prison for a total unstayed term of 28 years.
With over 25 years left to spend in jail, he'll be quite old by the time he's out, and making a comeback will almost be impossible. Regardless of all the crimes, conspiracies, and negative attention surrounding Suge, like it or not, you can't deny that he was a massive influential figure in the evolution of rap music. He was a large part of hip-hop history, and no one can take that away from him. Make sure to check out these other videos about Suge if you enjoyed this one. And we also have a Death Row Records playlist on the main page of the channel. Let us know how you feel about the big man in the comments below, and help us out by liking and sharing. Thanks for watching. Stay blessed, y'all.